South Park is officially back. Season 26 is in full swing and I could not be happier. Historically, season premieres for South Park are super hit or miss because they plan the episodes out much further in advance than their usual 6-day schedule. This has led to some incredible episodes that took full advantage of the extra time, like Season 8's Good Times with Weapons, but it has also resulted in some of the worst episodes in the series, like Season 9's Mr. Garrison's Fancy New Vagina. Knowing this pattern, I was definitely a little nervous for the season premiere. I think one of the biggest complaints that I, along with many others, have about modern South Park is that they struggle to capture the same feeling that the Golden Age did. Everything just feels slightly off, and it's even more noticeable if you watch the older seasons as often as I do. With that being said, I am happy to report that I was pleasantly surprised by this episode. It was funny, relevant, and full of commentary on current events. It kind of felt like what Matt and Trey would have made if these events had happened back in 2006, and that is a major compliment. It brought back some classic characters, introduced some new ones, parodied current events, and remained hilarious through all of it. Now, you may be asking, do we pick up where the streaming wars left off? Did they make TikTok look as cringy as it is? Did Cartman move out of the hot dog? And where would I place this in my South Park ranking list? The answer to those questions will be revealed right now. Kind of, yes, no, A tier. The episode begins with Kyle and Tolkien hanging out, talking about all the TikToks they've been making. Oh, so we're doing this, huh? Everyone at school is talking about their TikToks, and they're essentially viral superstars, garnering a whopping 17 likes on their most recent TikTok. The rest of the boys are pretty confused about the whole thing, mirroring the reaction I had when watching this scene.
What the is this?
You know, I'm surprised at how long it took them to include TikTok in the show, but they really did a great job at capturing the feeling of your average TikTok, since I was cringing so hard I had to avert my eyes from the screen. They really made you feel like you were watching a TikTok. The boys find it kind of strange that Kyle is hanging out with Tolkien so much, and it really affects Stan. Kyle has been Stan's best friend throughout the entirety of the show, so for Kyle to seemingly move on to a new friend really gets to Stan. He is visually upset about it, and Cartman decides that he needs to make it right.
I'm gonna go be a good Christian.
Cartman's idea of helping is to get Tolkien to hate Kyle by trying to convince him that Kyle runs Hollywood and controls all of our media. Honestly, one of the more rational Cartman ideas. When discussing it with Tolkien, the rest of the class overhears Cartman's conspiracy. Though it doesn't seem to be a big deal, it subtly plants the seeds of conspiracy into the minds of the class. Also, real quick, I thought that this music teacher was a new character, but as it turns out, he's appeared in 2 episodes before, in Season 2 and in Season 4, meaning that the last time we saw this dude was over 22 years ago. That's just insane, honestly. When Cartman is at lunch, we get reintroduced to one of our old friends, Cupid Me. Cartman's little Cupid version of himself that he used to set up Token and Nicole in Season 16 and Tweek and Craig in Season 19. Except, Cupid Me has changed. He's the one telling Cartman all of these anti-Semitic conspiracies. He also has become a devout Christian and decided to change his name to Cupid Yee. You know, that's really weird. He changed his name, became super religious, wears a black hoodie and a chain, and is spreading insane anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. How strange. This all feels really familiar. It's kind of like he's supposed to be representing someone. Oh, I know. Kyrie Irving. Oh, it's Kanye? Well, that was my second guess. You know, if I had a nickel for every time a black celebrity got really into a religion and began spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it's happened twice. So now we're back to me wanting to claw my eyes out watching these TikToks.
I try not to kill myself.
When Clyde and Scott confront Kyle in the hallway. After they overheard Cartman's conspiracy, they are now questioning whether Kyle actually does run Hollywood. They even go as far as to pitch their new movie idea just in case.
Scott and I do have this sweet movie idea about a dude who has guns for hands, and we have the first 20 pages written, so...
Kyle isn't even willing to respond to the accusation, since even mentioning it will cause more people to believe it. However, this just causes the rest of the school to believe it even more.
Holy shit, Kyle runs Hollywood.
Continuing Cartman's quest to get Tolkien to buy into these conspiracies, Cupid Yee heads over to his house and begins whispering them into his ear while he sleeps. Something that's interesting about this is that when Tolkien's dad comes in, We see Cartman in the room escape through the window. This is interesting because it seems to confirm that Cartman performs all of Cupid Yee's actions. In the past, we've seen him do this kind of stuff, but there's never been any indication that Cartman himself was there. And as we'll see, the end of the episode makes this whole thing a lot more confusing. During school the next day, Kyle notices that he seems to be the target of more attention than usual. Jimmy even comes up to Kyle and gives him his headshot, for no particular reason, of course. This makes Kyle very upset, and when Tolkien says it's not that big of a deal, it introduces a new dynamic between the two characters.
It's a huge deal. It's an attack on my ethnicity, Tolkien. You don't understand.
I don't understand.
The rumors of Kyle running Hollywood get around quickly, and this leads to Randy having a conversation with Gerald. He goes on a rant about the amount of wokeness we see in Hollywood and even gives his opinions on some new movies.
And just as a side note, I'm going to say it out loud, Avatar 2 sucked. It just sucked, Gerald. Someone had to be brave enough to say it.
Quick side note, Randy is wearing his classic blue scientist shirt, which is some continuity from the end of the Streaming Wars special. Maybe this means the end of Tegrity Farms for real? Probably not, but I guess we'll see in the rest of the season. But of course, Randy didn't hear these rumors from Cartman. He heard them from a well-respected artist on TV. We then see Cartman wearing a very distinct outfit on a very distinct set of a talk show, spewing more of his conspiracy theories encouraged by Cupid Yee. Cupid Yee even mentions how a certain German dictator wasn't actually a bad guy. Quick side note, I've said the phrase German dictator before and got a bunch of comments saying, actually he was Austrian. Yeah, I know that, but he was the dictator of Germany, making him a German dictator. Sorry, back to the video. Now this is obviously a reference to Kanye going on InfoWars and saying some absolutely insane things, spreading this anti-Semitic narrative. Now, when I saw the teasers for this episode about Kyle running Hollywood, I was pumped because Kanye in South Park is one of my favorite celebrity characters. But Kanye himself never actually appears in this episode, which at first was a little disappointing to me, but as I thought about it more, it seemed like the right move. As my boy Johnny Tuccello said in his video, the whole appeal of Kanye in South Park is that they could take his insane actions and push them to the extreme, cranking up the absurdity for comedy. But with this situation, there is no room to hyperbolize. When the dude you're trying to make fun of is literally saying that Hitler wasn't a bad guy, where do you even go from there? That's about as absurd as it gets, and because of this, creating a separate character to represent him makes a lot more sense. This is the same reason that their episodes making fun of Trump never quite landed for me, because his actions were already so absurd that there was no effective way to parody them. They tried to do the same thing with those episodes by using Garrison to represent Trump, but the character really just devolved into Trump without anything distinct enough to make it a funny parody. Anyways, Tolkien was one of the people watching Cartman's interview, and during the next TikTok shoot, we begin to see that perhaps the seeds planted by all of this anti-Semitic media coverage have begun to sprout within Tolkien, as he makes some subtle remarks about Kyle's role in their TikToks.
Nah, you do the kid part, it's funnier.
Okay, yeah, I guess you call the shots.
What's that supposed to mean?
Just means you're in charge.
This escalates to both of them making arguments related to their ethnicity, and it ends with them breaking up their TikTok team.
I don't want to make TikToks with you anymore! I don't want to make TikToks with you anymore!
After realizing how effectively this message has been spreading, Cupid Yee goes off the rails and goes, quote, full DEFCON 1. Cartman then goes to Stan's and explains that they have to get Cupid Yee back on his meds before it's too late. It's Valentine's Day at school, which is when Cupid Yee is most powerful. Everyone is celebrating in the hallway, where we also get to see what appears to be a new character that works at the school. Meanwhile, Cupid Yee is in the bathroom, plotting the rampage that he's about to go on. When Kenny and Craig break in, Cupid Yee begins to shoot his arrows at everyone, turning them anti-Semitic. This episode as a whole, and this scene in particular, are a perfect representation of how hate can be spread sheerly through exposure. Throughout the episode, as the conspiracies are talked about more and more people start believing that there may be some truth to them. A perfect example is Tolkien, who at first completely denies Cartman's conspiracies, but as the episode goes on and he keeps hearing about it over and over, he begins to have second thoughts about the truth behind these statements. Even if it's just a subtle shift from not believing it at all to believing that it could be possible, that's enough for the message to spread and infect more people. Cupid Yee's arrows are a more on-the-nose example of this idea. The more arrows he shoots, the more people get stuck with them. It doesn't even matter if he misses the majority of the arrows, with enough of them, people are bound to get hit. This leads to a group of the infected kids ganging up on Kyle and laying out all of their biggest complaints about Hollywood.
How many more superheroes do you think we need?
Mario Brothers, Cal? You seriously can't do better than Mario Brothers?
Another quick side note, this whole part shows that Cupid Yee is in fact real and independent of Cartman, so I don't really know what to believe anymore considering the whole stuff that happened earlier. Anyways. Eventually, Stan and Tolkien defend Kyle against the mob, with Stan admitting that he was jealous of their TikToks. Then, Cartman busts in and chases down Cupid Yee, force-feeding him his meds and bringing back Cupid Me. With the old Cupid Me back, he begins shooting his love arrows, reversing the effects of the anti-Semitic arrows. The episode finishes with Kyle on a talk show discussing the truth behind these Jewish conspiracies and why they spread in the first place. One of South Park's strongest traits is the amount of research that the writers do for whatever topics they discuss, and this is a perfect example, because Kyle then systematically deconstructs and destroys the conspiracy theory through facts and logic. This whole part was super interesting because they give a complete history about why it seems like there are so many Jews in Hollywood, discussing how Jews weren't allowed in most professions, so they began doing vaudeville acts, which were frowned upon by the Christians. These same Jews would move west and start the first movie studios when movies were considered to be lower class work. And that's why there seems to be a lot of Jews in Hollywood, because they basically founded the movie industry back in the day. And finally, the crowd loves Kyle's speech so much that they decide to give Kyle a very special privilege.
You know what I think? I think this kid should run Hollywood.
Yeah!
Honestly, this episode was awesome. I love how they recaptured that vintage South Park feel while tackling current events so effectively. In my opinion, this episode was probably better than any from the last season. It had plenty of clever and relevant satire and comedy while remaining hilarious all the way till the end. In fact, probably the funniest joke of the whole episode wasn't even in the episode, as when the credits begin to roll, basically the entire episode is credited to Matt Stone, who is Jewish. They even added that Trey Parker was, quote, the assistant to Mr. Stone. This episode really felt like a return to form for South Park, being one of the best episodes in the last 3 years, excluding the specials. Putting it into my episode ranking list, I would give it a solid A tier, placing it in the 70th spot. Oh, another quick update to the ranking, Pip is still last. Just thought I'd remind you guys.